What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is Constant Sports. I am your host, Constance. Now, the WNBA has been busy since the All Star break. I'm talking about. I thought I knew the schedule, and I'd go onto the app and realize that there's a whole game going on at that moment. So, a lot of games happening back to back. We're having full slates, like 4 or 5 games a day, and I am loving it. It's a lot to keep up with, um, but I'm trying my best. I really am. So the first games after the All Star break were a little rough when I say in some of the teams how they came back. Some of the teams were really hitting their shots, some not so much. Some of the players really just continued their stride kept going since before All Star break, if they played an All Star game, and even now after. Um, so two of our top three teams, Connecticut lost to Phoenix, and then New York lost to Dallas. Even though Dallas is a very good team, they're right there in that mix. They're the top one of the top five teams. So both of those top three teams took an L, which standing wise keeps them pretty much exactly where they were. So that doesn't really change anything. It really helps Dallas more than anything, and even Phoenix, who they've been 2-1 post the All Star break, so they've really been playing differently, which is crazy because Diana Taurasi hasn't really been playing. Um, so that's very interesting to see with the standings how if Phoenix continues to win games and other teams like Chicago and LA continues to drop games, then Phoenix very might well be able to find themselves at that number 8 spot going into the playoffs. So that bottom, I said that middle, those three middle teams with 4, 5, and 6 is going to be a nice show to watch. And I mean, it still is. But now teams 8, 9, and 10 are all fighting for that number 8 spot to go to the playoffs. So you never know what's about to happen, and I am here for it. All right. So Chicago broke its 4-game losing streak, beating Seattle on Saturday. But that means that now Seattle is on a 6-game losing streak. And you guys know that I live up here in the Pacific Northwest, so I definitely get to go to more Seattle games and watch their games. And because we're playing all these different teams, I'm kind of going to a game where they're playing a new team that I hadn't watched them play this season in person. And the I don't even know how to explain it. We all know that Chicago doesn't have great defense, but against Seattle and how they play, you don't have to have good defense. Seattle at times has very good defense. Same with Chicago. At times they have very good defense. But like I said, Chicago has no issues with scoring the ball. Seattle has a huge issue with scoring the ball. Even with Jewel Lloyd, who's leading the WNBA in scoring percentages, they're not a good shooting team. Jewel Lloyd has scored 24 points since the All Star break. 24 points since the All Star break. She's played 2 games. She, by last game against Chicago, the third quarter, she had 6 points. She finished the game with, I believe, 12. This is your all star, supposed to be the leader of your team. And to me, she doesn't contribute until the second half. She is a one-half player. I haven't seen a very all-around game for her. I've seen where she'll have a very decent first half. She'll maybe get into the double digits by the time halftime comes. She might hit 10 points, maybe. And then the second half she'll go off for 20 points. Or then there'll be some games, well, she won't score in the first half at all, let alone even attempt shots. and then in the second half she'll go off. But I don't need for my star player to have one good half. You need for your star player to have an all around good game from start to finish. If you're not, if you're noticing that your shot is off, which Jewel Loyd's shot has been off since the All Star game, and I guess she was the All Star game's MVP, scoring like 31 points, but that hasn't shown post All Star. She hasn't been hitting her 3 pointers. I mean, she's a guard who has, she'll get out of the game with maybe 2 assists. Maybe 2 assists. Sometimes 0 assists. And with, I feel like for a guard who isn't scoring and can't score the ball that well at this moment, you have to get your teammates involved. And that is what she's struggling with at this moment. She's trying to put the team on her back and go, but you can't, because she has very good players on her team, players who can score the ball. So I feel like, I don't know if it's a trust level or something like that, but she has to trust them in order for them to get out of this slid. You cannot finish the season winning maybe 2 games for the rest of the season. We all know how the WNBA, how these teams are. You know, anyone can beat anyone. I get that. But for Seattle, the hopes of them winning double digit games this year to get to maybe 10 wins this season's not going to happen. So, and I don't see them building on anything that they've learned from their losses. And the reason why I say that is because the same reason why they're losing the games are exactly the same. They're not scoring enough points. They're not defending well. They're not getting others involved. And Seattle, you have Jewel Loyd, yes. But you have Izzy Magnabor, Jordan Horston, who has been playing very good ball as a freshman. She's playing with so much confidence, and I love watching her play. We are a very huge fan of Jordan Horston. Sammy Wickham comes in and she does what she needs to do. They just got Gabby Williams back, so her trying to get her feet under her, we all know that that's going to be a process that it's going to take. Like, it doesn't matter that you just came from playing overseas, trying to come back to the W and play in these systems, learn these plays, which every team every year tweaks something just a little bit. It's not always the same from the year prior, especially with Seattle losing so much firepower that they had from last year to this year. So what I would like to see from Seattle is something to prove that they've learned from the mistakes and the failures they've had this season. These last games of the season, I want to see some type of progression in certain areas, just so we can see if what they're working on is working, pretty much. Is what coach putting out in the practices and on the sidelines in the middle of the games, are they registering it? Are they working on it in practice? If not, it sucks to say, but I don't see Noelle Quinn possibly keeping her job this year. It might. The WNBA is a lot different when it comes to coaches, especially with certain organizations, because the organizations pretty much run everything for their organization. So if there's no improvement on anything that they've been failing at this year, I don't see her continuing on as the head coach. I would love to see Pokey Chapman step in. That way it's not a complete coach change, a whole new coach having to come in and teach all new plays or even learn that system and see why it didn't work. But with Pokey Chapman, she's there. She's been there since the beginning of the season. She knows the players and they're comfortable with talking to her. And Pokey is a well-established coach in the W. So I think if Seattle wants any type of success next year, and they do get rid of Noelle Quinn, their best option is to go with Pokey Chapman, because she's new to the franchise, but being here for a year already, She knows the players, so she's not new. So it's not like they have to learn a whole new coach or anything like that. It's just going to be some tweaks that she's definitely going to make that she's probably wanted to make, but because this isn't her team, she's not the head coach, she can't. So unfortunately, I do see that possibly happening. The only coaches that'll probably lose their jobs in the off season is Noelle Quinn in Seattle. Um, I feel like all the other teams, obviously, you have some teams who coaches left or were let go, as in Phoenix. Phoenix head coach, they parted ways, and Wade in Chicago leaving to go and coach for Toronto. So we'll have a few coach switches in the off season, but at this moment, the standings still are the same way. The teams that I see going forward have been the exact same teams. Um, but Phoenix is trying to creep in there, and I like it. Hopefully, they get in there because I feel like Phoenix is a very feisty team, and they're a wild card. You never know what's going to happen with Phoenix in the playoffs because they are so much more experienced than a lot of these other teams. Phoenix is way much more experienced than Dallas. You know, the only teams that Phoenix aren't more seasoned against are Connecticut. Connecticut is probably the most seasoned team because that team has been together for the whole time. You have Vegas, who have players who have all been to the playoffs, and plus they just won the championship last year. Same with New York. They have players who have been to the playoffs, been into championships, and won championships, but not together. Phoenix has been to championship games, played in the playoffs together, so they're a very well seasoned team, and they will definitely be a wild card in the playoffs. So we will continue this conversation next week, talking about the games that are coming up this week, which, again, we have a full slate of games this week. And we'll see if some teams lose that shouldn't be losing and some teams win and maybe, shake up these standings a little bit. We shall see. I'm here for Dallas possibly moving up into the top three. That might happen. You never know. So, yeah, continue watching, continue supporting me. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you. Peace, love, happiness.